the developer experience, or particular to understand how it is even different building a long-running workflow or an orchestration process, as we call, versus a normal process. And I would like also to touch upon some form building capabilities. That's what we cover as part of the rapid UI development. To give an idea of variants of forms that could be built, customized for end user interactions, because Action Center is more focused on how we can bring end users into this whole RPA chain. And we'll also, if time permits, we'll have a quick glance at what's lined up next. And I think by the end of the session, I'm hopeful that you would have identified the applicability at your end and give us for. So that's a high level agenda. Quickly, UiPath, as you all know, you would have seen the slide multiple times. UiPath, but it's important to set this context. So UiPath transitioned to hyper automation ready platform by bringing in various range of product offerings versus our earlier core products like Studio, Orchestrator, and Robot. I can hear a disturbance, Vibhor. Is that fine with you guys?
Yeah, so request everyone to mute your mic.
Okay.
Yeah. You continue, I will
I'll
keep
go ahead,
muting
yeah.
everyone.
Sure, yeah. So we have transitioned to a hyper automation ready platform because we have brought in range of product offerings that also collaborate well with each other, ranging from our discover phase to the measure phase. So quickly looking at, if you could see, we have brought together a platform that makes it easy for all key stakeholders in an organization to work with automation, right, be it an RPA developer or a citizen developer or a business analyst or a line of business owner or a process expert, and also a non-technical employee like a front office executive. So we are going to focus today on engage phase that brings together capabilities for business user interactions with RPA. So that's going to be the phase that we are going to look at, and particularly in engage phase, Action Center is going to be our focus. Again, to set the stage, what is it all about and how is it going to be useful, right? So I'm sure most of us here in the who have used UiPath RPA or in general in RPA world understand variants of hybrid scenarios that requires human-robot transitions through your enterprise world experience. So we have towards our right, your right, fully attended scenarios, right? This is typically the complete back office automations that's handled very effectively today by unattended robots. And if you look at towards my left, you have attended automation that delivers on human assisted scenarios. So these are like two extremes. Now, with UiPath Action Center, we are focusing on what we thought was comparatively the underrepresented but very critical scenario that includes unattended robot to human handoffs and vice versa. So this becomes a very critical when enterprises starts operationalizing AI through RPA and move towards cognitive automation, right? It moves beyond typical task automation to process automation. And our robots, how much ever completely you automate an unattended scenario, robots would need in specific times a just-in-time, on-demand assistance in case of validations or approvals, or for that matter, foolproof exception handling. So that is where we are calling here as partially unattended scenario, where human sets the stage for the unattended process to complete. So the robot would have started off, but just in time requires some input from end user, and then human comes in and then gives the right inputs, and then it continues. As well as we are also looking at scenarios where human can enter business input. It is available today through a pure attended mode. We are also looking at enabling how can a human trigger unattended processes through business inputs. So this is pretty much what is covered under Action Center, or what we call as human in the loop. Now, let's look at the solution what we have from UiPath. Today, any typical robot task executes for a limited time span, right? Typically few minutes for that matter. We understand that in the enterprise world, end-to-end business process spans across multiple departments, usually owned by different teams. It could take hours or days to complete execution. Today, most probably we are, doing it as multiple fragmented processes with no meaningful chaining end to end. Now, that's what we are trying to achieve by introducing long-running workflows. So we have built a framework to design and execute such long-running processes, primarily ensuring optimal resource usage. So I'll come to that, what we mean by optimal resource usage and how it is different from what probably we have been doing earlier. So one is the long running workflows. And secondly, we have introduced ability for robots to create human tasks during workflow execution as and when robot needs assistance. And as you know, human task by nature makes a process long running, because we do not, absolutely don't want business users to keep continuously monitoring to see, oh, does the robot require any input? Also, the other way, we do not want robots to just keep on polling, just waste their resources, continuously polling to understand whether the user has given input. So both are extreme cases of resource, not an optimal resource usage. And that's why we introduced this event-driven solution from UiPath to bring in seamless robot-human handoffs. And last but not the least, we also have enhanced our process monitoring capabilities, because we have introduced this long running workflows which introduce new states into our jobs execution, right? So we have also enhanced process monitoring to see that you can now track a process end to end, looking at all the RPA workflows or jobs which are chained together, as well as look at human tasks that come together and make it an end-to-end process. Most importantly, we have baked in all these features into UiPath platform components. So we have enhancements to Studio and Robot, and we have an activity pack and enhancement to orchestrator services. But we ensured that in summary, there are no new installation requirements to achieve this feature. We'll have a quick look at long-running workflows. So I did touch upon most of these things, and you'll also see in a live demo. So Studio will be our process designer, as I mentioned. We have introduced a new process template called orchestration process for RPA developers and process experts to model and build workflows by chaining multiple RPA workflows and human tasks that can be long running in nature. But technically speaking, the parts of the workflow or the entire workflow still gets executed in one or more robots. So it's a decentralized execution of workflow. But how do you, then you might be wondering, okay, then how do you really manage this whole long running state? So what we do is with the workflow state, as and when it hits a long running activity, the workflow state we centrally coordinate and orchestrate, because orchestrator is our central nervous system. So we use that capability to coordinate all these multiple workflows that comes together to get a end-to-end long-running workflow implementation. Now, what it means, robots can suspend a workflow. So this might be a new state if you haven't really explored it earlier, right? So typically workflows had a start and an end, and with multiple failure or successful statuses. Now you will see a job in UiPath, right, or a process execution can have a suspended state. Now robots can suspend a workflow at multiple points. It could be either waiting for human action or other processes to complete. But the beauty of is that robots are completely unblocked. So suspended doesn't mean that it takes away your robot resources. Robot is freed up. You will see the robot is available to pick up and execute any other tasks meanwhile. And workflow automatically gets resumed. So this is taken care by our orchestrator. that it gets resumed in any available robot upon certain events like a job completion or a queue item completion or a human task completion. So typically before this feature, I'm sure you would have done it by continuous polling, right? So typically this helps you to build meaningful end-to-end process without robots polling whether, oh, did this queue item entry was completed, or did the human really perform this action. So it avoids this continuous polling and it helps you to build meaningful end-to-end process. Now that we understand that what is this long running workflow infra, it's more relevant or it's more natural to consider human tasks as a long running step, right? So what is a task? Task or action that you will see we interchangeably use is a set of business context which is coming from the workflow, right? Because your robot is executing some stuff and it needs some input from the end user. So the robot has to give some context to the end user so that he or she can act on it. So typically tasks consist of set of business context and a visualization tied to it. And that's very important that, we have to provide a seamless, simple interface to the end user who comes in and, just, you can't, for example, if it's an invoice processing, you can't really dump the entire invoice data if you just need, for example, an approval for a specific, item in the invoice, right? So that is where it is quite important that an RPA developer or a process expert is able to rapidly build custom UI, which is very much tailored for that end user experience. So we provide a form-based visualization. Now, how do the business users access or act on these tasks? Do they really wait in front of their system, waiting for a form to pop up? That will be really unproductive, right? After doing all this. So that's where once robots create the task, business user at their leisure, for example, when I meant at their leisure, if you have an unattended bot, which is actually processing tons of data overnight, and there is a bunch of tasks that is required for end users, the end user comes the next day morning. That's what I meant by, by leisure. So business users can access these tasks from a central web instance or a mobile app. So in 1910 and even in 20.4, which is going to be our FDS release, task access or actions access is through Orchestrator web portal. So it is not really a thick client application that needs to be installed or so on. User can either, if they are on the go, they could just access this task from their mobile phone, for example, and provide input to the robot. Isn't that cool? So users are presented with a crisp summary of information they need to perform a task in an intuitive custom form-based user interface. Now there'll be questions on who does the task assignments, and how is this secure, and how it is containerized, and so on, right? So couple of ways of doing it. The workflow itself can handle the task assignment because we have shipped a task assign activity. But the other way of looking at it is also where we use the folders, the brand new folders concept in Orchestrator. I'm sure you would have explored that feature. That's where we containerize tasks, right? So tasks gets created under a folder, and you can have a bunch of users or a team monitoring all the tasks coming to a folder. So if it comes assigned to you from the workflow, you directly work on it. Or if it is it's a team pool, then you just lock it in your name and work on it. It's as simple as that. So we will be adding more task assignment options in future, but this is how it is today. And task management service is also built as bunch of APIs so that we can also have this integration opportunities with partner ecosystem, because we also are aware of the fact that some of our customers would have invested or implemented BPM partnerships or other process orchestrators. But what we can support here is the UiPath robots whenever it needs the input, the UiPath robots can create tasks, and those tasks can be visualized outside of UiPath. So that's where the integration options come in. So we are open for that also. So it's entirely API or services based. And yeah, so I think we talked upon the monitoring. So we we provide a way that an end-to-end Uber process can be monitored. I'll show you during the demo. Now, I also wanted to give an example. This is kind of the most asked queries that I hear, that, okay, what are the scenarios where this is applicable? Could you give some ideas and so on? So I'm just trying to, paint here some basic scenarios, and I'm very much hopeful that by end of the session, each one of you would have found multiple applicability of these features. And I'm really looking forward to get that information from you. It would be great if you could also put that in our chat window on where you think this is applicable. So a few scenarios is a simple code approval process, right? A code generation process that includes approvals based on country specific rules. And it depicts an approval use case. So with the current solution, we could in fact have conditions or rules handled in the workflow for number of approvals before proceeding to the next step. So in this case, I'm just depicting, okay, I should get minimum 2 approvals before going towards the code generation. But this is in general to give an idea that yes, you can bring in approvers, and even within approvers, you can have your own rules maintained in your workflow, right? And another applicability, it's an extension of approval scenario, a typical RFP approval, right? So you would see here multiple touch points of, reviews happening, physical to invoice comparison, and if there are any corrections that gets entered. So this is kind of a mix of business input and approval scenarios, right? So it's the RFP approval scenario. Validation scenarios, wherever there is this widely used doc extraction use cases, where whenever the extraction confidence level goes beyond or behind a specific threshold, then it has to be forwarded to a human, right? That's the typical validation scenarios. And I found this GL coding use case during invoice processing very applicable. So you look at, there is this invoice extraction model. This is an automatic invoice extraction happens whenever there is a confidence threshold level, right? It could be configured for different organizations, right? For some, it might be less than 98%, or some it be less than 95%, right? Based on your confidence check, bring up the document validation station. And it's also good news that we are also looking at having a web-based version of validation station, which will be out anytime soon. So this is kind of already giving you a sneak peek into what's coming up. So you would have seen validation station today that comes up in a pure attended mode, and you will soon see a validation station which is integrated with a web portal, a web-based validation station, right? So that similar scenarios where unattended bot has kind of processed multiple documents, only documents that needs extraction gets routed to an end user through an inbox. Now, that's one touch point. Now, look at this case where it's a non-PO invoice. I'm sure people are quite familiar, probably more than me, on the scenarios. Non-PO invoice, it is a known fact that a user has to provide the right GL coding. And this is very easily possible by just providing a dynamic drop-down based form. I'll show you how it can be done, right? So your workflow queries the right GL codes and then puts that as part of a drop down in a form. The end user, all it does is comes in, choose the right GL coding from the drop down and say submit, and it goes to the next step. And if there are any approvals in place, it gets go to the next level of approval. So here you see another human interaction. And if this is a non-PO invoice case, if it's a PO invoice case as well, there is this invoice PO matching. I'm sure today there will be invoices that gets into the exception state. I'm very curious also to understand how these exceptions are handled today, right? So do you see a business user coming in and performing or helping the bot to recover from an exception scenario? How is it handled today? Do you think really that this feature of bringing human in the loop is going to be helpful? So here you look at so here you see if there is an invoice PO matching or non-matching happens, then a human can, just say approved, and then it goes to the ERP. So just take one scenario, you will see how many user interventions are required. And with long running workflows and Action Center together, we expect UiPath can handle this end-to-end automation. Probably I'll have one more scenario. Is on the BFSI segment, right? So the mortgage document verification, this is a very simple process where the agents have to complete document verification, and if there are incomplete or missing documents, it has to be reviewed by agents and then marked as complete before the robot can continue. So this is one simple scenario in BFSI. And we also heard recently on the insurance space, I did not really convert that to a diagram, but those customers talking about a new broker onboarding that goes through multiple checks and approvals due to due diligence by security teams. And it says that it can go up to 2 to 3 months, so a real long running workflow, right? And so any other similar highly fragmented processes that spans across multiple departments are typically candidate for a long running workflow based automation. And if you have scenarios where a human input is required without really marking a workflow has failed or errored out, that's where it can be foolproof exception handling also to bring the human. So that's all, those are all the candidates of a long running workflow. I'm sure now you can also give us a lot of ideas or scenarios that you have identified, probably in the chat window, that will really give us an idea that this is being understood, and you are already seeing scenarios where this can be applied. Now, I will pause here because the next bunch of things I wanted to do is to take you through a demo on how an unattended to human handoff happens, how is the end user experience, and switch to developer experience primarily to explain what is different than the usual process. How is an orchestration process different? So orchestration process is a template that we have introduced to build long running workflows. So long running workflows is more, I would say, a human friendly name. An orchestration process template is the template name for that. And I also would touch upon the form building experience so that you know what are the variants of controls that we support and how easy is to really custom build forms using a UiPath Studio. At this point, if there are basic questions, you could probably start putting it in the chat. Vibhor, do you want me to look at questions now or continue with the next steps?
So there is no question right now.
Okay,
We can
awesome.
continue.
Okay. Okay, so let's look at the demo, right? I'm sure all of you will be facing this timeout as well. So as me, so give me a second. Let's log into the cloud portal. So this is in fact my community version. And this feature is open to all the community members. It's open for the tests, and it's fully fledged available for all of you to just build workflows and run, execute, and look at this whole experience. Awesome. So let me take you through with my first scenario, right? So it's called invoice and claim processing. Let me explain you the workflow. So this is the web viewer that we have added in 1910, so that without looking at the studio, you could still get an idea of what the process is and how the process looks like. So I will shift to the studio experience, but let me just explain you the workflow. So this workflow is part of a larger AI-based document understanding process. So it starts by reading the OCR data folder. And it does a basic classification. It's whether it's an invoice or a claim. I have, in fact, 2 documents in my folder, one invoice and one claim. So, and it will prepare the invoice data And then it will create, for an invoice document, it will create an invoice approval task. And if it's a claim document, it will create a claim approval task. So, and just to demonstrate that workflows could even assign a task once it's created. In this case, invoice approval task, I'm assigning right from the workflow. So you will see here, assign invoice approval task as well. But the claim approval, I'm not assigning. So you will see that it's created as unassigned directly, right? So it's now, it created tasks, but at this point, does it suspend the workflow? No, it won't, right? Because the idea is that there will be scenarios where you need to use a human task as a fire and forget mode, right? You want to just send it as an for an acknowledgement or information, right? So you could do that, but and then it will just move on to the next step, right? So what I'm doing is I'm reading through this entire folder. As I said, I have 2 documents here, and once it is done, I'm going to a step where now I'm going to suspend my workflow. So that's where I'm using this activity called wait for task and resume. So as and when a robot sees wait for task and resume, that's where the workflow gets into a suspended state, which means it frees up the robot. It persists the workflow context in a central persistent store through orchestrator. And it now, at this point, it is the workflow is just waiting for a human, or if it's an underlying queue item, or it could be another job, right? All these variants of long running activities. So in this case, it is waiting for human action, right? So, and as I said, most importantly, the workflow is suspended and robot is freed up, right? It's not really that robot will be shown busy. And now it's an event driven mode, and user comes in, say, probably after an hour or 30 minutes or a day, right? And user performs the action, and just in time workflow is resumed exactly at this point, right? And then it checks, oh, if it's an approval of claim approval, then as per this workflow, I trigger another unattended process to invoke a claim process. It's called SAP claim process, expense processing. And in case of invoice, it will trigger, it will execute another branch called SAP invoice processing. So this is just to give you an idea of how a process can inject human task and then resume a workflow and then use the input from the user to proceed with the next steps. So let me execute this workflow, show you the end user interaction, and then we'll get into the developer experience. So let me go to my jobs pane. And let me execute this primarily as an unattended process. So this is the process that that we just looked at, invoice and claim processing. I just have one unattended robot. And let me start executing it. So what's happening right now is that the robot is reading the OCR extracted folder. It is now doing the classification, and then bang you go. I got a task assigned because one of the tasks I've been assigning to an admin, so I've logged in as an admin user. And you see the workflow goes into a suspended state. Now the robot is actually available and not really blocked. Now any job in a suspended state will have a pane like this. Let me try to get rid of this thing. Okay. Okay. So any job in a suspended state, you will see a new pane that comes up and says, what is it waiting on? So it says that it's waiting on an invoice approval, which is pending on admin, because invoice task I assigned to admin from the workflow itself. And there is a claim task, which is today unassigned. So You see this little actions menu, and this is what the end user will just focus on. Because I've logged in as an admin, I'm able to, switch between jobs and rest of the menu items. But typically, a business user would like to be onboarded with just these actions permissions or task permissions. So it is containerized in that way. And also here I'm creating all the tasks in one folder. But if I really move to a different folder, you will not see any tasks because there are no tasks created there. So tasks created and containerized into a specific folder. So let me go to actions. And this is where you see the tasks that are created. So if you look at, this is a task that just got created 2 minutes ago, and the one which is assigned to me. It's called invoice approval. So let me click on it, and it renders me a task which looks like this. And now this data is actually coming from the OCR extracted folder. The robot needs input for me or approval for me. And of course, this whole form can be customized. You can make which one is editable, which field is not. I've made everything editable. So that's the reason I see here. So things like, for example, this is like a complex data type collection. I can change this data, and the changed data is sent back to the workflow so that the workflow can consume it and process that as per the next step. So that's the beauty of it. So let me, as an end user, complete this task and quickly go to the jobs view and see what's happening there. Now you will see that there's another process that got kickstarted. Now, I did not trigger anything manually. So what has happened is this invoice and claim processing, which is the Uber process, it resumed by itself, and then it internally triggered an SAP invoice processing. Now, I see it is still in suspended state because as per my workflow, I'm expecting both the tasks to be completed before I can mark this Uber workflow as completed. Now, let me quickly go to the actions pane. And as an end user, this is an unassigned task, so I can just lock it in my name. And yeah, so give any comments and then say approve. I don't want to act on the next action. So let me quickly go to my jobs pane and see that this workflow is resumed. So this is the new, long running workflow step, like suspended, you have resumed. And once it's resumed, from resumed, it go into the running mode. And that's when it will try to understand the action given by the end user along with the data that the end user has provided. And then it resumes the workflow in any available robot. So that's the most important thing. So in this case, I just have one robot in my environment, but it is quite possible that if I have multiple, uh, robots in an environment, the workflow can be resumed in any available robot. So need not be the same robot. So if you look at, this is what from an end-to-end scenario perspective that I wanted to showcase. Let's look at this, right? So this is the Uber job. This is the Uber job. Let's look at the logs and see how this whole process happened. So look at this. I'm sure such an end-to-end view was not possible without long-running workflows. So this invoice and claim processing, which is processing these two documents, it internally created two human tasks, and the workflow got suspended. And job resumed because one of the tasks was completed. It internally triggered SAP invoice processing and still went into suspended state because it's waiting on another task. Now, when the next task is completed, it triggered an SAP claim processing. So this way, you could see a meaningful end-to-end process model that has happened, not just by chaining multiple unattended processes, but human actions too. So this is the scenario demo that I wanted to show you. Now we can shift to the studio experience, right? So I wanted to take you through how do you build it? What is so special about building an orchestration process or a long running process? So let me take you to the studio experience and let's see what it is. So most of you would have seen this, but if you have not seen, you will see something called orchestration process template. So this is a new template that we introduced. Now, once one uses this template and you look at the activities, in the activities pane, you will see something called a new category, which is long running. And under that, you have jobs, queues, tasks. Within tasks, you have a bunch of activities and a time-based delay. Now, these are, if you look at jobs and queues, those are long running variants of the existing activities. And I'll explain you what is a long running variant mean, what makes a difference. And of course, there's a bunch of new capabilities where we can inject human tasks. So we will have a look at what the form task means and what's an external task. And assigned task I just explained already. Now let's take this simple example, right? So this is a very simple workflow where I've built it as an orchestration process. I'm just preparing an invoice object data. All I'm doing is I have an invoice object. I'm just making a data set here. And my expectation is that I want to pass on this invoice object to another unattended process. Think of it like, you want to pass it on to an SAP robot because that's a specialized robot, which is going to probably, fetch you all order line items because it has all the credentials and, software installed to talk to an SAP backend, right? So it's at the end, you're passing on bunch of data to another unattended process through a start job and get reference. Now, what is start job and get reference? How it is different? It's pretty much the same as how you would have done a start job. The only difference I would see here is that I'm passing an invoice object, and you see the direction. Prior to long running variant, you will just say in, because you can just pass input arguments which will be consumed by the other process. But here we have included out and in out, which pretty much means that like you invoke a method, you can in fact start a job, wait for its completion, and get back the output of that job in your Uber process without doing any special handling, right? So I'll demonstrate that to you. So I did a start job. I'm passing an invoice object. I'm just logging what is the invoice amount. And then right after that, I'm saying that before I cannot really proceed to the next step unless I get this job completion event. And also I need some input from the underlying job. So typically I'm trying to chain this job into this process. All it requires is just it takes a job object and that's it. And job object is what you will see as an out parameter from the specific start job and get reference. Because the reason we expect a job object is that in a workflow, there can be multiple persistent points, right? So it can, you can invoke multiple jobs, you can wait for multiple, you have multiple waiting points or persistent points. So I will be using this persistent points as a term. And what we call as persistent point in a long running workflow is wherever you see a wait and resume. So it could be wait and resume for a job, wait and resume for a queue item, or wait and resume for a task, right? So because that is the time where we will persist the workflow context and then suspend the workflow, right? So just when I do start job and get reference, it just starts the job, and then you can do a bunch of stuff what is required after this. So in this case, I'm just logging just for demonstration, and after that I'm doing a wait for job. So at this point I expect the underlying job is complete, and after that I'm simply logging the same thing, invoice dot invoice amount. So I'm not doing any specific handling here. So let me execute it, show you how to execute from Studio, right? So that's kind of a small behavior difference. So I'm executing this process. and it has started, and it internally triggered another start job, which I can see if I go to my jobs pane. You will see here that this invoice chaining process was just now triggered and in fact completed, because I'm not doing really much on this other than just changing the amount to 5,000, right? So what I want to demonstrate here is that so it's now in a suspended state. Since I'm executing from studio, I have to manually go resume. But if I was executing this process in an unattended mode, it would have automatically resumed, like we just saw in my previous demonstration. So now let me just come and resume the workflow. It will proceed and complete the workflow. Let me quickly pull up the output pane and show you. So it said that original invoice amount is 2,500, and once it's resumed and it's completed, it's the change invoice amount is 5,000. So all I did is I just logged the same object before and after, and it was automatically mapped, because in the arguments, the workflow arguments, I marked it as in out. It is as simple as that. So we made the developer life easy by just providing it. The same is applicable for a queue item as well, right? Because adding a queue item is another way of triggering unattended process. Same scenario, I can do a add queue item and get reference, and then you can do a bunch of things, and upon queue item completion, the control comes back to the Uber workflow with all the data that has been mapped as output, right? It's automatically linked. So I hope this made it clear. I know this is a very simple example, and this could be, of course, applied in much complex scenarios, but the idea is that you understand what is the difference in using the long running variant. Another example, this is a beautiful workflow that our academy team is currently working on. So I'm not planning to execute this, but meanwhile, in this context, you will be seeing a academy course coming live soon on this feature with more details, right? So at this point, so at this point, what I would like to mention is that consider orchestration process as or always model orchestration process as an Uber workflow that chains multiple RPA workflows as much as possible. That's kind of I'm covering the best practice also here. Just make all these the main XAML, mainly keep it as multiple sequences or multiple invoke workflow files, so that what you pretty much do in your main XAML of an orchestration process is literally orchestrating multiple RPA workflows and human tasks, right? To really give that aspect of it's a process designer. The main XAML is your end-to-end process designer, and all the details you either take it out to a secondary XAML or as a different scope. And it has some importance I'll touch upon when I talk about the best practices, right? So the most important thing for the long running variant of jobs and queue items is that robot does not need to poll to see whether a queue item is processed successfully, because this is kind of I would say, a common scenario that I've heard come across, where RPA developers today use queue item as a way to transfer data between processes, and the ideal way of understanding whether this process is complete is by a continuous polling. But if you really chain using add to queue item in a long running workflow, you don't have to do that continuous polling. So I'm sure the robot usage will be much optimized, because it's a more event driven mode. Orchestrator takes care of telling the system that the underlying queue item is completed, and of course automatically even maps the data back to you. So no more JSON handlings and so on to just read the output data from an underlying queue item completion. So that's with respect to the long running variants. Just I'm looking at a time check. I think I have just another probably 12 more minutes. Let me quickly cover the forms part of it, right? So as I was talking about, long running workflows is also about Action Center, where end users can really come in and perform actions. And that's exactly, it's so relevant that RPA developers or business process owners are actually able to build, uh, you know, forms in a much rapid way, customized for specific scenarios. In a workflow itself, you can have multiple forms built with different customization. And if someone of you have used this forms activity in attended mode, this learning is completely reused. It's the exactly same forms infra that we are using. The only difference is that the forms rendering doesn't really happen from the attended machine or a robot tray based. It happens from the central web instance or from the mobile app, right? So that's the difference. But at the end, building the form, the learning is the same. Now, just quickly looking at, the designer, I want to really quickly show you the capabilities of form designer. This is like our test workflow, in fact, just to showcase, all kind of customizations possible. So you have text box, text area, number, password, and each one of them has multiple variants. So I'm not really going to, take you through all these options, but just to give an idea. My most favorite here is this drop down, because this has been the most asked feature as well. I'll come to the last one, which is the dynamic drop down list, right? So pretty much what it says is that my workflow has fetched some data through a web service, or it could be through an API call, and I want that to be shown to my end user. Typical GL coding scenario, what I mentioned, right? So all it required for me is to give the field key as city. In this case, I'm actually forming a number of cities in my dropdown, and all I gave was city as a field key. And this little data collection here, I just marked a city underscore dropdown, and it's an array of strings. It could be an array of collection as well. And of course, here I'm just dynamically loading just these three data, but consider this string being built, array of string being built through a web service call or an API call, right, which is truly dynamic, right? So that's possible. Drop downs are possible. Data table, I'm sure that's kind of one of the favorites. So you can actually pass data tables into a form and visualize that the way you want, right? So you can visualize in a container, data grid, multiple forms of data grid, and edit grids. So this is the design time. The design time experience, it's not really very tough to explore. So one last bit of it is the invoice form. So this is how a complex data object can be passed, right? So invoice object that I've been using, all I do is pass invoice object, and I open forms designer, and I see a generated view of it. So it has the header, it has the line items, and each of these fields are customizable, right? Click on it, and then you can customize it the way you want. So yeah, so that's with respect to the forms interaction. I can show you in runtime how it looks like, but typically I wanted to kind of give an idea about the wide level of controls that's supported and how customizable you can build this user interface with a simple drag drop scenario, right? So I have executed this in my alpha environment. I can just show you how the end user experiences is typically the same way that you access uh, the form from the previous scenario, but in this case, it will just show you all variants. Yeah, I think one more thing I want to show you, the images. I think that's something that I've been hearing a lot. So let's look at the advanced control. And I'm passing something called image, right? So the two scenarios. One is I have an image URL. I want my end user to really see that image and then do something as an input. Other thing is I want an embedded image scenario, right? I want a form to have an embedded image. Both are possible. So all you need to use is a HTML control, right? So HTML control has multiple ways of showing a URL or showing it as an embedded control. So in this case, I'm using it as embedded control, and I'm giving image as the property name. And in the image, I'm passing a base64 encoded string. So that's the expectation. It will come as encoded. Embedded. And if it's a URL, you have to again use the HTML element component and just use the href tags. So that way you can provide dynamically either a URL or an embedded form. So let's look at, I've actually executed this workflow before, and I'll show you the HTML element, right? So this is how, like this is, as I said, this is my test workflow. So I'm actually trying to embed this, and this can be dynamic, right? For now, in my workflow, I've given action centers base64 encoded string. Look at this, where I can actually open a URL, and that URL can be an image, and then you can expect your end user to provide some input based on the image, and then it proceeds, right? I have seen a nice demo of a CAPTCHA. It was really innovative that one of our colleagues built, right? A CAPTCHA was really shown within a form, and then end users could interact with that. So that's with respect to forms. And one more thing, I told you an insight that validation station is going to be integrated. We just have a sneak peek into how it looks like. If probably this is the first time we are really showing this publicly. This is in progress. This is again, I would say something that work in progress, but this is the entire validation station being opened as a task. So we will have customized activities. Our document understanding team will be really giving good sessions on this, but this is an excellent achievement where you open your task inbox, and one of the types of task is document validation, and you click on it, you see the entire web-based document validation station coming up, where you can actually go change your extracted content and then submit. So this is like a fast forwarded demo. Let me look at how we are. Yeah, so I think I covered my demo perspective here. I'll quickly do the best practices, and I'll tell you, we have documented this, but again, these are like most frequently asked questions. So one thing is that orchestration process can only be run as unattended process, because that's our primary use case. And make sure to build persistent points, which I mentioned, wait and resume activities in the main XAML, because that's how it is designed. Now, orchestration process can also be run in a session 0 by marking it as background process. But by doing that, it will be run faster. But this also brings to the fact that if you're marking it as a background process, then you cannot run UI automation. So this is a switch that is possible. You go to Studio, and we have built this switcher. So if you mark it as background process, it runs in session 0. If you really have UI automations in your workflow, just switch it off. Support persistence should always be on, right? And even if you have UI automations, make sure you invoke them in a separate scope. This is little technical reasons, because also linked to the fact that all variables in the scope of a persistent point, which is wait and resume activities, must be serializable. Because you would understand the technicalities behind it, right? Because what we do is we deserialize all the variables in that scope as and when the workflow goes into a suspended state. At that point in time, if there is some variable in the same scope which is non-serializable, it gets into a runtime error. So that's the reason what we are saying, that the moment you pull all the suspected non-serializable activities to a different scope, like it can be an invoke workflow in a different secondary XAML, which is the most used scenario, I would say, or it could be a total different scope, then you won't run into this problem, right? But otherwise, there is a serializable as a prerequisite. Now, also important thing to note, if you are expecting some local resource access, right, make sure that keep in mind that when the workflow can be resumed in any available robot. So those local resource requirements have to be handled. Otherwise, if you assume that the same robot is going to resume, you might end up with an issue. And yeah, that's pretty much on a best practices side. We also have put this as part of documentation, and also we hope to hear from you if you really discover some best practices. So just quickly recap. I hope the session has given you insights into how to automate wider range of end-to-end processes than just task level automations, and how we support rapid UI development to bring in customized interface of business users. We also talked about how long-running workflows can make your end-to-end business process modeling more optimal because it does not really require continuous polling by robots or human. And we also talked about how end users can access the tasks or actions through a web or a mobile app. So if someone is on the go, they could use the mobile app and still interact with an unattended robot. And of course, no additional installation requirements to, move from task automation to process automation. It's all baked into UiPath platform components. And we also will have more out of the box task visualizations like user validation station. We will have probably more applications as visualizations like form validation station, many more things that could be integrated based on scenarios. And yeah, we also looked at how this automatic mapping of output arguments from invoked process to the Uber process helps, right? It's kind of reduces the whole handling that you have to do in the workflow. So that's pretty much I had. I think it was just a rush and I think I'm on time. So I think at this point, I should really pause for any questions that you may have.
Yeah, Lizzie, so we have some questions, so you can see chat window.
Okay, let me look at it.
So I sent you some of the question in private window as well, so you may see some duplicates.
I see. Okay. Let me read through the questions. To the speaker, what is the path to learn for chartered accountant to adopt UiPath RPA in various organizations? Do you want to take that, Vibhor?
So I will
I think, okay,
yeah.
Learning. So one thing is, of course, we have this wide academy sessions. I don't know whether the participant has really looked at. So we have from basics to advanced sessions in our academy, which is free and available to all. And yes, I think that will be a good starting point. And of course, you really look at a chartered accountant, you will be expert in your area, and then it's all about applicability, right? So technology is just one part of it, and the business paradigm is that you bring in, and I think it's going to really gel well together. I would suggest get started with the academy sessions. Is any timeout? That's a good question. Yeah, that's as of now there is no timeout, but that's where we call as business metrics in our roadmap. So both for tasks or any long-running activities, this will definitely be implemented. Yeah. Any cap on number of times interactions can happen? No, no cap. So it depends on your scenario. How to create forms? I hope you would have seen that. So I hope you would have seen that. So it's as easy as open the studio and just drag and drop a create form task. Oh, I think it's in read only mode. Let me do here. Yeah. So just drag and drop create form task and just say open form designer. There you go. You can just drag drop stuff and your form is being built. So it's a drag drop based interface that I was showing. And I think I was showing all the options that is possible to customize and all these controls that you can explore. So it's accessible from the create form task activity. All you need to do is get the latest studio, open orchestration process template, and go to create form task, and then that's what it is. That's how you build forms. Okay. For using complex variables like list, dictionary, do we always look at JSON or DSON? So serialization will be taken care internally only as and when For example, if you're using a data table in a form, it doesn't really serialize at that point, right? And at the point where you're trying to call a wait and resume, wait for task and resume, that's where our robot will look at all the active variables in that active scope, and it'll try to deserialize and then write the workflow context. So the serialization aspect will be taken care during the workflow context persistence. Otherwise, you can just use data table directly in a form, as I showed in the example. You can just pass a data table into a form. How is the wait and resume materialized? Where is the task ID stored since UiPath is not an ERP? Yeah, okay. So see, task ID is stored in our internal storage. And in this case, look at it as, we are not really at the point looking at it as a business data system, right? So you are automating certain tasks or processes, and at some point in time your robot requires some input from the end users, and robot needs to provide some context to the user, and that context to the user is the only thing that is tied to task ID. So we create a task and we create something called task data, which is nothing but only that bunch of variables or workflow variables you would like your end user to visualize and act on it, based on it. And it's more like a transient data, right? And that once the user acts on it, the data is passed back to the robot machine, because upon workflow resumption. So it's more like, I see tasks as more as interim storage, just to have the right business context presented to the end user. Definitely at this point, using Action Center, we are not looking at we being storing the entire business data with us. This is purely for interaction between robot and human. And Uber workflow, yes, I meant Uber workflow as orchestration process that chains multiple RPA workflows along with human action. So that's what I meant by Uber workflow, because today you use multiple jobs or multiple queue items to interact or virtually chain processes, but now you have literally a process called orchestration process, which can act as an end-to-end process. So that's why I mention it as Uber workflow. How UiPath can be leveraged? Automation testing is definitely a different aspect itself. We do have an entire product area for that. So I would suggest to wait for those sessions and product features on the UiPath testing. So UiPath testing is a different, I would say, a new evolving product area itself. Yeah, RE framework, this is something on top of our list. We haven't integrated with RE framework yet. Can you show familiarity with any other software SAP used by MNC? So let me take a stab on it. I don't understand whether I'm answering the right question. So there are multiple ways you can interact with SAP or any other tools, right? Specifically, if I take SAP, one is through the UI automations, as you know, right? It can actually do a log on to SAP logon and then do the right, clicks here and there and then put the right input. So that's a UI based automation. Apart from that, SAP BAPI, which is a bunch of activities, native activities that helps you to interact with SAP through APIs, because BAPIs are SAP way of interacting, exposing APIs, right? So there are two ways of interacting with SAP. Similarly for Salesforce as well. For all business applications, we are coming up with very specific activity pack, which can be used either one. Of course, it can be used specialized from an API interaction perspective, and the other way is the typical UI automations, right? Now, how it is relevant in this context, you can consider, for example, SAP invoice processing, right? That's an unattended process. It could be either doing through a BAPI interaction or it could be doing through a UI interaction, but that's an unattended process, and that's a robot which is dedicated to do the SAP interactions. And if I have a process which I need some input or I have to read some data from SAP, I'm going to do a start job, read SAP invoice, or write SAP invoice, and it's going to be done by that specific robot. So it's quite generic, I would say. And if you are more interested on the business application interaction, we do have a specific bunch of activity pack. Please do look at our forum itself. There's a bunch of activity pack on for SAP, Salesforce, Dynamics, Microsoft Dynamics, and so on. I need to create all tasks upfront. How it's working? You could create task upfront. So see, tasks could be created. So if the question is that I don't want to create tasks during RPA workflows, but from somewhere else, you could create that as well, because it's all APIs, right? So if you really go to platformuipath.com, and if you really look at Swagger, you will see all the UI interactions that we are doing is available as APIs as well. So if you want to really create tasks outside of RPA workflows, it's possible, but our primary scenario was to enable UiPath robots while executing a workflow to create tasks, specifically on the execution side and so on, right? So okay, I think what are the other platforms? Oh, this, as I said, this bunch of business applications, activity packs available, Salesforce, and Dynamics, and many more. How the invoice image mapping created in action items. Yeah, so all I did was, if I understand the question is for this, right? So let me go to the advanced. Yeah. And if I really look at image is a string of variable img. For the demo, what I've done is I've taken a base64 converted form and assigned to this variable so that it can be embedded, right? But you can imagine, so your workflow can actually, whatever image that you want to really show, you can on the fly convert and then pass it on to the form. In the form, all you need to do is drag and drop a HTML container. So this is in advance, you will see HTML element. Drag and drop an HTML element, and whatever is the key, right? So go to the edit thing, and the field key, just provide the image. Only thing is, ensure that you check this refresh on change, and that's all. It actually will start showing up the image. So it's really not tough. Okay, where are the more questions? UiPath free version is enough for doing certification. Could you please some insight on Academy? Do you want to take that question on Academy?
So
Vipul?
yeah, Academy is free. Certification is free till 30th April.
Okay.
Is the question like?
Yeah.
Yeah, UiPath free version is enough for doing the certification, I would say.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and you can find certification and diplomas for various roles. So I would highly recommend that if you can visit academy.uipath.com, and if you have any further question, we can connect offline as well, so I can talk to you.
Sure. Can we access tasks using APIs? Of course you can. I was just trying to actually show the. So you have, this is the Swagger, and go to tasks. You can get all our OData endpoints. You can do task, assign task, reassign. You can do everything. Whatever you see from the UI, that's accessible from API as well. What is the mechanism behind to resume job? Yeah, this is the magic that Orchestrator is doing. So as and when a robot executes a wait and resume activity, that's a persistent point, right? So as and when it executes a wait and resume activity, it actually stores, robot sends the workflow context to orchestrator, and orchestrator stores it. Today we store it in blob storage, and then it suspends the workflow. It also keeps track of which workflow needs, which depending on which event, like could be a job or a queue item, which specific queue item, which specific job ID, or which specific task ID, right? That mapping is maintained in orchestrator. And that's when orchestrator is the central coordination point. As and when task is completed, there is a task.completed event that happens. There is a webhook event as well for that matter, for task completion, task assignment, and everything. So as and when a completion event happen, orchestrator makes sure to resume the workflow. So it's entirely done by the orchestrator piece. Okay. Any updates on machine learning extractor of UiPath? You mean to say the template-based extraction? There was template-less extraction also being worked on, but I'm really not an expert to answer this. Probably I'll defer this, Vipul. Probably we need to note this and get back.
Sure.
Which activity can be used to extract? So you could use the intelligent OCR package to extract data from invoice. So I have an example here. In fact, I did not build this workflow, but yes, so what they use is the intelligent OCR activities, and that is how they digitize the document. Yeah. I think that's pretty much we had, I guess, the questions.
So Liji,
Can
you
we
also
get
want to
some?
run, you want
Yeah.
to run a poll also, just in case?
Yeah, can we get sample XAML? Yeah, sample. Whenever it came to XAML, I'll just touch upon this. So we have the snippets available, orchestration, and under this you have bunch of snippets which will help you to just quickly drag, drop, and run and see if that helps. But of course, it does not have the image example, but we will look at how to publish it, or at least we'll write a blog on that. Yes, running a poll. Yeah, I did, Vibor.
Yeah, so request everyone if you can see the poll and select some option.
Okay, so is there any further questions? How dynamic CAPTCHA can be handled in RPA? I have seen actually an example, but of course it was built by one of my colleagues. We will look at whether this is something that we can as well publish somewhere. Yeah, I understand the question from dynamic CAPTCHA perspective. See, it always has a time frame, right? So from a demo perspective, it does work, but depends on when the user comes in and how frequently can we rebuild or give the user the latest CAPTCHA, because once form is built, it's built. So I understand from that perspective, we have to find some more innovative solutions. But if it is about a CAPTCHA is created, instead of the user going to that specific system and website, I can give that input right from my mobile. That's possible, right? So that was the idea I mentioned, CAPTCHA.
I got one question in private window saying that, can we get the workflow files?
Yeah, I can share. Before, I think we'll figure out a way
Yeah,
how
okay.
to really do this. Okay, so
I think we have 30% people who have answered, so we can close this one and maybe poll
start
another.
the next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it says relaunch poll will clear existing poll results. Oh no, I should just drop down. Oh yeah, I got it. Awesome. Thank you so much for the questions. I think it's quite interactive. And I did try to cover a lot of things in small time window. Probably it also was like Is image classification? Okay, there are many questions. Let me. Yeah, is it possible with Tesseract for handling capture? I agree. Yes. Yes. So image classifications. That's what we have today is a document extraction, document classifiers. But there's a bunch of innovations coming from our ML team. So probably that's something follow up, Vipur, that we can probably have some session from our ML team, AI ML team, on what's the new innovations coming up. Looks like there are a lot of questions on the extraction side of it.
Sure.
And also, if you guys could actually, keep posting the scenarios in your mind, because of course we came with some scenarios that we have been hearing from our customers, but I'm sure on the ground, please do go back, brainstorm and look at in your organizations how we can get more value out of RPA. That's the whole idea of bringing in these features.
And we will share the recording and PPT later in the mail. So in case you have not registered already, I request you to register on link I'm sending on the chat so that we can send you email.
Is there any additional license cost? That's a good question. So there is no additional cost from the perspective of building long-running workflows, pure long-running workflows. There is, if you really look at what Action Center means, is pretty much we are bringing end users or business users to interact with unattended robots without really needing anything installed or anything like a attended bot, right? So this is without attended bot itself, how you can interact with RPA. So we have an entry level SKU, which is called Action Center, which is like, I would say that's an entry level SKU. So which is a per user licensing only for user interactions with through the Action Center inbox. So yeah, so there is a license cost per user cost just to interact for the business users to interact with robot. Okay. And meanwhile, the polls are happening. I want to just touch upon I think we have probably 8 minutes because I wanted to show you what is coming next. The only thing is the major feedback that our customers have been telling is that Orchestrator is good, but it's for a different persona, which is more an IT admin persona or a UiPath admin persona. Now, onboarding business users to Orchestrator might be kind of not a good experience. And that's the reason we are looking at, as you can see, for business users, we are coming with an end user portal, which primarily is meant to give them a tailored experience for interacting with RPA. So all your actions, it will give a summary of all your top actions, all the recent applications that they need to access, all the processes. And then of course, this is a new, I would say, revamped UX treatment that we are looking at, more like an email treatment to bring in the tasks, right? So this is a task inbox, and this is how the validation station will be integrated. And we are also adding a feature where business users can actually submit data or input to trigger unattended process, something like this. A sales quote approval, if it expects some customer data, a form will come up, and based on the submission, so this form will be generated based on the input arguments of a workflow, right? So this is a way that end users, business users on day-to-day basis can even trigger an unattended process, right? So actions in a way is more like in the loop scenario. Whenever robot needs assistance, the tasks get created, and process input is in a way that they can provide business inputs and they can trigger unattended processes. Similarly for queue items also, you can upload files to a queue item and internally, trigger unattended processes. So this is our initial thought process, and there is some high level roadmap items like, as someone asked, business metrics or SLAs, typically, and then much better assignment rules. And yeah, so there is a bunch of features that we are looking at futuristic, but it's all dependent on the adoption and what customers would like to see. So it will also be interesting to please use the forum features to give feedback on what's missing when you go back and look at the scenarios at your end. What are the top features that would have helped you to probably implement it at your workplace? Licenses for end user interaction. Yes, that's correct. So it's per user. It's not per interaction. It's per user, and it's a yearly license per user. It's not per interaction. Awesome. Did I really do all the polls? I was not sure. How many polls did you get, Vibhor? Did you get all 5?
I remember 4.
4.
You can see on the top, if you see the 5th one, which is our exception.
Okay, got it. So it
I
is
think you
a
have
real.
our exception. Yeah, I think you have done all.
I think I've done all. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. I think there is one more, which says, I think I was just talking about that, whether people are comfortable onboarding users to today. How does users trigger back office automations? That's will be an interesting aspect, whether they are comfortable onboarding users to Orchestrator. Unlike what we have been hearing, this will be a good data point for us. And I don't have a poll for this, but please do. I think you have 5 more minutes. If you have more ideas or scenarios where you think this long-running workflows and human in the loop and overall action center is applicable, please do put those in the chat window so that we get more, I would say, thought process around any product gaps that we may have to implement.
We have last question, that is this available in 2019.4 version in Studio, or we need to upgrade? Yeah.
It's available in 2019. No, 2019.10. Sorry, it's not 2019. It's 19.10. So it was released as part of LTS 2019.10. So you need to upgrade. Of course, all the community versions have it. So, but from an enterprise version, yes, it's 19.10. Cool. I think that's all I had from my end.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lizzie, for your time. And thanks everyone for joining. And in case you have any question, I have shared my email ID, my phone number, my LinkedIn. You can reach out to us anytime.
Thank you so much.
And I will be sending email along with PPT and recording quite soon.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.